The railway. It shrank distance dramatically. It changed the speed of life. Charles Dickens sent Mr. Dombey on a train journey into the Midlands on the London and Birmingham Railway.
Through the hollow, on the height, by the heath, by the orchard, by the park, by the garden, over the canal, across the river, where the sheep are feeding, where the mill is going, where the barge is floating, where the dead are lying, where the factory is smoking, where the stream is running, where the village clusters, where the great cathedral rises, where the bleak moor lies, and the wild breeze smooths or ruffles it at its inconstant will. Away with a shriek and a roar and a rattle, and no trace to leave behind but dust and vapour.
George Eliot gives us a different view of the arrival of the railway in her novel Middlemarch. Women, both old and young, she writes, regarded travelling by steam as presumptuous and dangerous. This town, Stamford, is often taken to be the model for Middlemarch. George Eliot, her real name Mary Ann Evans, was born and brought up about 60 miles away near to Nuneaton. Her father was the land agent on the Arbury estate there, and the young Mary Ann often accompanied him when he drove out to talk to tenants and inspect farms. When she began to write, she drew heavily on those memories of people and places from her childhood. In one of her first stories, Scenes of Clerical Life, the real Astley Church here on the Arbury estate becomes the fictional Nebley.
A wonderful little church, with a checkered pavement which had once rung to the iron tread of military monks, with coats of arms in clusters on the lofty roof, marble warriors and their wives without noses, occupying a large proportion of the area, and the 12 apostles with their heads very much on one side, holding didactic ribbons painted in fresco on the walls.
George Eliot must often have come here to the grand house on the Arbury estate with her father, taking in everything she saw. But when she came to write Middlemarch, the book became less concerned with place and more about the way in which the town worked. Middlemarch centres on what George Eliot called the shifting boundaries of social intercourse, about fortunes and status rising and falling. Writing in the late 1860s, Eliot was looking back to 30 years earlier, when political reform, as well as railways, were bringing radical change. One of Middlemarch's main characters has a plan to improve the lot of the poor. She knows that no matter how sentimentally poets and painters portray the countryside, life there is often cruel.
Think of Kit Downs, Uncle, who lives with his wife and 7 children in a house with 1 sitting room and 1 bedroom, hardly larger than this table. I used to come from the village with all that dirt and coarse ugliness like a pain within me, and the simpering pictures in the drawing room seemed to me like a wicked attempt to find delight in what is false, while we don't mind how hard the truth is for the neighbours outside our walls. I think we have no right to come forward and urge wider changes for good until we have tried to alter the evils which lie under our own hands.
But there's never just one way to look at landscape, to see only poor cottages, as George Eliot knew. Here's her description of the country through the eyes of the mayor's children in Middlemarch.
Little details gave each field a particular physiognomy, dear to the eyes that have looked on them from childhood. The pool in the corner, where the grasses were dank and trees leaned whisperingly. The great gate and fences against the depths of the bordering wood. And the stray hovel, its old thatch full of mossy hills and valleys, with wondrous modulations of light and shadow. These are the things that make the gamut of joy in landscape to Midland-bred souls, the things they toddled among, or perhaps learned by heart, standing between their father's knees while he drove leisurely.